Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Biblical Unlocks. This show is designed to help keep up your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life, as studies routinely show that those who read their Bibles regularly have significantly lower symptoms of depression, anxiety, and anger, whilst also higher sentiments of compassion, forgiveness, and a sense of purpose in their lives. So if you enjoy episodes like this, please consider following and rating the show. It's free, helps me out a lot, and you could always change your mind later. In this episode, we're going to read through a chapter of the Bible, and then afterwards we're going to go through some deep biblical unlocks, try and understand what we've just written, and how we can understand the chapter in the broader context of Scripture. And today we're going to be reading Leviticus chapter 4, which is going to prescribe the sin offering. In Hebrew, it is called hatat, like hat and at. Anyway, and this is for unintentional sins which are committed by different members of the community. So by the anointed priest, if he commits a sin, what's going to happen then? The whole congregation, how can they atone for their sins? They commit a sin, they've gone against God, how are they going to pay up, in a sense? The leaders, the ordinary people, and each case is going to have a different prescribed animal and a different ritual. So whilst it's going to seem a little bit weird, like I'm laying hands and then we're going to apply blood and we're going to burn fat at the altar, all of this stuff, the offering is actually going to remove the offender's guilt or defilement, so to speak, so that the sanctuary, that is the community, can remain holy and we have restoration here. So in Leviticus chapter 1 to 3, we saw some offerings. We saw a burnt offering, a grain offering, and a peace offering. You can go through those videos if you want a refresher. And chapter 4 is going to actually address sins that break the covenant, but that are done unintentionally. So think about unintentionally. That is meaning it's not done with purpose, malice, meaning. So what this implies then is that the system that we have in place, the sacrificial system, actually recognizes that there are degrees of responsibility. And it's actually going to provide, a structure and a priestly means for forgiveness and reintegration. And the chapter is going to show that God's holiness and mercy, they work together. Sin cannot remain, this is so important, sin cannot remain before a holy God. Yet God provides a way for restoration. And these rites are going to foreshadow the ultimate atonement in, yep, you guessed who, Jesus Christ. Okay, so that's what we're going to go through. So the previous chapters of Leviticus have been quite short. This one is going to be a little bit longer. So it's Leviticus chapter 4. If you want to open your Bibles and read with me, that's fine. I'm also going to read it. But I don't know, usually people enjoy when they read alongside me. Okay, I'm going to start verse 1. So the focus here for verses 1 to 12 is going to be sin offering for the anointed priest, right? So when leaders fail, who's going to carry their burden? This is going to answer that. Verse 1. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelites, saying, when anyone sins unintentionally in any of the Lord's commandments about things not to be done, and does any of them, if it is the anointed priest who sins, thus bringing guilt on the people, he shall offer for the sin that he has committed a bull of the herd as a purification offering to the Lord. He shall bring the bull to the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord, and lay his hand on the head of the bull. The bull shall be slaughtered before the Lord." Verse 5. The anointed priest shall take some of the blood of the bull and bring it into the tent of meeting. The priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle some of the blood 7 times before the Lord in front of the curtain of the sanctuary. The priest shall put some of the blood on the horns of the altar of fragrant incense that is in the tent of meeting before the Lord, and the rest of the blood of the bull he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He shall remove all the fat from the bull of purification offering, the fat that covers the entrails, and all the fat that is around the entrails, the 2 kidneys with the fat that is on them at the loins, and the lobe of the liver, which he shall remove with the kidneys, just as these are removed from the ox of the sacrifice of well-being. The priest shall turn them into smoke upon the altar of burnt offering. Verse 11, but the skin of the bull and all its flesh, as well as its head, its legs, its entrails, and its dung, all the rest of the bull, he shall carry out to a clean place outside the camp to the ash heap, and shall burn it on a wood fire at the ash heap. It shall be burnt. Okay, little break. Verses 13 to 21 now. This is going to be focusing on the sin offering for the whole congregation. Verse 13, if the whole congregation of Israel errs unintentionally, and the matter escapes the notice of the assembly, and they do any one of the things that by the Lord's commandments ought not to be done, and incur guilt, when the sin that they have committed becomes known, the assembly shall offer a bull of the herd for a purification offering, and bring it before the tent of meeting. Verse 15, the elders of the congregation shall lay their hands on the head of the bull before the Lord, and the bull shall be slaughtered before the Lord. The anointed priest shall bring some of the blood of the bull into the tent of meeting, and the priest shall dip his finger in the blood, and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord in front of the curtain. Verse 18, he shall put some of the blood on the horns of the altar that is before the Lord in the tent of meeting, and the rest of the blood he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering that is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He shall remove all its fat, and turn it into smoke on the altar. He shall do with the bull just as he has done with the bull of purification offering. He shall do the same with this. The priest shall make atonement for them, and they shall be forgiven. He shall carry the bull outside the camp, and burn it as he burned the first bull. It is the purification offering for the assembly. Okay, now, verses 22 to 26, this is going to focus on the sin offering, if the ruler or leader unintentionally sins. Verse 22, when a ruler sins, doing unintentionally any one of all the things that by the commandments of the Lord his God ought not to be done, and incurs guilt, once the sin that he has committed is made known to him, he shall bring as his offering a male goat without blemish. He shall lay his hand on the head of the goat. It shall be slaughtered at the spot where the burnt offering is slaughtered before the Lord. It is a purification offering. The priest shall take some of the blood of the purification offering with his finger, and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and pour out the rest of its blood at the base of the altar of burnt offering. All its fat he shall turn into smoke on the altar, like the fat of the sacrifice of well-being. Thus the priest shall make atonement on his behalf for his sin, and he shall be forgiven. Okay, finally, verse 27 to 35. This is going to be sin offerings for any ordinary person. So we saw for the anointed priest, the whole congregation, the ruler/leader, and now we're going to be talking about the sin offering for any ordinary person. Verse 27, if anyone of the ordinary people among you sins unintentionally in doing any one of the things that by the Lord's commandments ought not to be done, and incurs guilt, when the sin that you have committed is made known to you, you shall bring a female goat without blemish as your offering for the sin that you have committed. You shall lay your hand on the head of the purification offering. The purification offering shall be slaughtered at the place of the burnt offering. The priest shall take some of its blood with his finger, and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and he shall pour out the rest of its blood at the base of the altar. Verse 31, he shall remove all its fat, as the fat is removed from the sacrifice of well-being. The priest shall turn it into smoke on the altar for a pleasing odor to the Lord. Thus the priest shall make atonement on your behalf, and you shall be forgiven. Verse 32, if the offering you bring as a purification offering is a sheep, you shall bring a female without blemish. You shall lay your hand on the head of the purification offering. It shall be slaughtered as a purification offering at the spot where the burnt offering is slaughtered. The priest shall take some of the blood of the purification offering with his finger, and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and pour out the rest of its blood at the base of the altar. You shall remove all its fat, as the fat of the sheep is removed from the sacrifice of well-being. And the priest shall turn it into smoke on the altar, with the offerings by fire to the Lord. Thus the priest shall make atonement on your behalf for the sin that you have committed, and you shall be forgiven. I was speaking with one of my friends the other day, and we were talking about how reading the Old Testament can be such a drag at times, because so many names to go through, so many tabernacle building tutorials, so many different ritualistic procedures that you have to understand, the cubits and the purple, crimson yarns and all of this stuff, and it becomes quite tedious to read through. However, what he told me when he was reading Leviticus was that, all of this is trying to set up the biblical narrative. It is setting up a pretext for Christ ultimately coming into the world. And I was like, yeah, that's 100% right, because what we're trying to understand with Leviticus is, number one, God is holy, God is just. You cannot enter into the presence of a holy God if you yourself are sinful. Now, we've committed sins. Okay, what are we going to do with that? Well, we could say, oh, it's really nothing, committing a sin. Everyone commits sins now and again. What Leviticus is trying to explain is that sin is so important. It's so important that you have to do all of these ritualistic procedures, every single one of them. An animal has to be sacrificed. The blood it has to be without blemish, so on and so forth. What it is doing is setting up the biblical narrative. It is setting up Jesus Christ like an alley-oop, okay? And what it's going to do is it's going to illustrate the ramifications of sin. And this is what the point of Leviticus is and why we need to go through it. Let's go through, again, verse by verse, through some deep biblical unlocks. Verses 1 to 12, what do we see? If the anointed priest, okay, the priest, that is like, you could say like a pastor, a priest, if they sin unintentionally, he brings a young bull without blemish, important, without blemish. He confesses by laying of hands. When you lay hands on the animal, it's almost as if it is a symbolic representation of the transferring of sins. And the bull is slaughtered, and then the priest applies blood to the horns of the altar, sprinkles blood before the veil, and pours out the remainder at the altar's base. And the fat and certain organs are burned on the altar, and the hide and the flesh are taken outside the camp. Okay, what is going on here? First and foremost, the priest stands between God and his people, and if he commits an unintentional sin, he basically contaminates the entire sanctuary. So what that means is, he needs to be accountable to God as well. In fact, his accountability before God sets the standards for the community, the congregation's accountability before God. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, we saw the laying on of hands, right? Laying on of hands transfers responsibility and identification. That's the next thing. We see the blood is applied to the holy place, on the horns of the altar. Why? Because what that's doing again is it's removing the defilement, it's removing the sin so that the worship can continue. And the removal outside, right? The removal outside of the camp. You saw that the hide and the flesh are taken outside the camp. That signals that that sin is outside of God's presence once atoned. Did you catch that? That's really important. So, the hide and the flesh must be taken. Look at this. Verse 12. All the rest of the bull he shall carry out to a clean place, outside the camp, to the ash heap, and shall burn it on a wood fire. At the ash heap it shall be burnt. Once the sin has been forgiven, it is outside of God's presence. So important. He forgets your sin entirely. Next one. Verse 13 to 21, we saw the congregation sin. How does the congregation pay for their sins? When the whole community sins unintentionally, for example, neglecting something holy, the elders bring a bull before the tent. The elders lay hands, the bull is slaughtered, the priest applies the blood to the altar, as with the priest's offering, and the ritual removes corporate impurity. So, sin can be social. That's the first thing we can understand here. Private failures can pollute the entire congregation, can pollute the entire public worship and the community's access to God. Again, showing how important sin is and how seriously we need to take sin. First thing. Second thing, the elders represent the people. So, the entire community sins. Who has to lay their hands on the bull? The elders have to lay their hands on the bull. So, that's the next thing. And then atonement is reconciliation. It restores the whole community. Okay. I'm going to go through these next ones. Verse 22 to 26, this was if a leader sins unintentionally, he has to bring a male goat without blemish, lays hands, slaughters, blood at the altar, fat burned. Same pattern, but it's attuned for the ruler's status. So the leaders are accountable, again, but they are distinct. That is, the offering differs by status. It marks attention to the social order, but it still demands holiness. Everyone is subject to God, even if the sacrifice is slightly altered. And instead of a male goat, for the ordinary person, it's a female goat or lamb without blemish. Or if it's a poorer person who can't afford a female goat or lamb, the chapters allow birds or even flour for the grain offering. Person lays hand, the animal is slaughtered, blood is applied to the altar, and again, all it's saying is here the system applies to all social classes. So that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocks. This show is designed to help you keep up your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life. I upload daily, so if you don't want to miss tomorrow's episode, feel free to rate the show and follow. Otherwise, just have a blessed day. And always remember, if you're not in your word, you're in your feelings. Godspeed.